Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, so therefore it is another day of Grant, teach me something. But unfortunately, Grant has the fever. He has the flu. He is literally dying of something.
But it's like 99.4 degrees really a fever?
I don't know. I mean, if you can text and you can Facebook, you're really not that sick. So therefore, today, to pinch hit, we've got Mr. Daniel Moore, who's going to be doing a segment of Daniel Does It Better. I don't know. Anyway, so stick around. What we're going to be doing today is, what are you teaching us there, Mr. Daniel?
We're going to be discussing property evaluation and specifically focusing in on comparable sales, because biggest this aspect of this business and one of the things that can hurt you the most is getting the ARV wrong.
So comps. So if I'm at a network event, a training event, whatever type of real estate thing, and somebody's like, hey, what's the comps? That's property evaluation.
Comps, comparable sales data, CMAs, all those different things. Comparable market analysis, that's what we're going to be reviewing today. And as simple as it might be, it is probably one of the most jacked up pieces of the business. I mean, you'll see somebody's like, $2 million house, and you're like, no, maybe a $400,000 house. Or somebody will come in and be like, you know what, this property is easily worth $650,000 when you repair it. And you're looking at it and you're like, you're at best 500.
And then also just basic terminology, because like I know I had this conversation yesterday, and it was, the person I was talking to was talking about, well, the comps are this, but as is, it's this, and but the comps are fixed up, but the house is it needs to be fixed. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you associating the as-is price with the comps price? Because those are completely separate, and when you're evaluating a property for potential purchase, you want to know what it's going to be final product, right?
Right.
So the as-is is I'm looking
for after repaired value on my properties, depending upon my strategy. If I'm not planning on making repairs to it, then I need to analyze the property based on its fair market value, which is what it's worth right now. So I'm looking at fair market value, after repaired value. I'm looking at both, and I'm analyzing my deals from there. So we're going to discuss all of that.
And if you hear a little roughage in the background, that's because my dog is
We got like a 90-pound puppy back here playing
with his rawhide.
With a rawhide. Well, he's a good dog, aren't you? Now Ryan's turning on the audio over here, being extremely unprofessional. But let's go ahead and get into this so we're not wasting a bunch of people's time. Before we get into that, for those watching, if you haven't heard of Propelio before, please make sure to check out Propelio.com, a good resource for your leads such as pre-foreclosures and probates, as well as if you're looking for high equity deals off the MLS or looking for MLS comps, Propelio.com is a great resource for you. So after that shameless plug, let's just go ahead and get into the class.
But before that, because we're both dudes, we forgot already. Happy Valentine's Day, loved ones.
Very, very happy Valentine's Day. I love you, babe.
Okay, and comps.
Let's go, comps. So let's go ahead and break into this. So what is a comparable market analysis? And a lot of people have this or that, but I'm just going to go ahead and give you a good textbook explanation of what a comp is. And it is an opinion or an estimate of the most probable price in a competitive and open market. Now, I need to be very, very, very focused in on those two words, opinion or estimate. And anytime you bring an opinion or an estimate into play, you run the risk of varying opinions because nobody's going to think the same. But what we're trying to find is an opinion or estimate of the most probable price. So you can have a wrong opinion in this case. If you have zero data to support why you think that house is worth $2 million when it's clearly only worth $100,000, then your opinion is flat wrong, and it can be proven through comparable sales data. So what we're trying to do and what we're looking through here is opinions or estimates of that value. Now, the sales price may not always represent the market value because you can choose to sell a property for less or more than what it's worth depending on what's going on. So just things to think about there. What are some cases you can think of where the sales value might be worth more than what the property itself is actually worth?
Probably when it's transitioning neighborhood, like say the house is basically is tear down and you're buying for lot value. Is that answer your question?
What I was thinking more of is owner financing.
Oh. my bad.
You know, a lot of the times when you're dealing with owner financing, the house might only be an $80,000 house. That's all it's ever worth on paper. But if you're owner financing it, you might be able to sell it for 85 or 88 or 90,000, get a little bit more of a premium because you're not just selling the house, you're selling one additional benefit, and you're selling the financing with
So
it.
what that just proves is not only am I an idiot on Grant Teach Me Something, I'm also an idiot on Daniel Does It Better.
I'm just going through, man. So those are some things I really need to point out, though. It's an opinion or an estimate.
Right.
And my opinion may not be your opinion, but if we are both good at doing comps, our opinion should be close. I might think the house is worth 88.9 thousand, and you think it's worth 88.1 thousand. But overall, we're really close in our margins. It's whenever you start saying, you know what, I think the house is worth 140, and I think it's worth 210, that we've got one of us is looking at different data, and we need to probably sit down and have a talk and look through and try and figure out why you think it's worth 140 and I think it's worth 210.
Right.
So whenever you're looking at these, you know, wholesale blasts and you're looking at numbers, you know, these people are looking at it from their opinion. You need to always go back and verify and double check because they may be high, they may be low. You never know.
And I've always looked at comps, it's almost like a little mini art form because, like you said, there is an opinion aspect to it. At the end of the day, what's the fair market value of a property? That's what somebody's actually going to pay for it. And then your house is always, you're judging your house based around its peers. But if you've got one house that's 2,000 square feet, one house that's 1,800 square feet, one house is 5 bedrooms, one house is 4 bedrooms, and your house is somewhere in the middle there, you can't get a set number. You have to magically manipulate, opinionate
I know
the numbers.
I know
like
I've
magic.
done a lot of work with Grant. I've done a lot of work with Scott. But one of the biggest things early on that we always disagreed on quite often was retail value. And that was because I approached comps from a different point of view than them, because I always buy properties and take them to the highest I possibly can in the market with a full rehab, completely gut that thing and start over. Their approach was totally different. They would get it to move-in ready and then sell. So they would take their move-in ready comps, and I would always take the high-end comps. So whenever I'd come to a property, I'd be like, this is worth 180, and they're like, we don't think it's worth more than 160. Well, that's because we had different exit strategies.
Right, and on that, it's different risk allotment as well, because their move-in ready rehab is probably going to be way less than your high-end retail. And as far as risk goes, because what if the market shifts? What if all these businesses that were moving to Dallas suddenly move to Shreveport?
Highly unlikely, but
no,
possible.
I get it. I totally understand, but but it's that risk mitigation, you know. So I think that's the right word. But
so I just need to keep dwelling on that opinion or estimate, because it is the only way to truly know what a home's sold for is put it on the open market, take multiple bids, and sell it. And not until it's sold do you truly know what it's going to sell for.
Right.
So you can have a really good understanding of what it's going to sell for, but up until then it's an opinion or estimate. But there's 3 ways to analyze a property. I'm going to go ahead and go through 3 of them real quick. You have an income approach. And the income approach is predominantly reserved for cash flowing commercial property. It's called capitalization rates, cap rates. So if you've ever heard of those terms before, cap rates, capitalization rates, that is typically a term reserved for cash flowing commercial real estate. And as single family investors, we're not going to dwell on this today. But we have a second form of appraisal, and that's going to be the cost approach. What cost approach is almost always going to be used for is non-cash flowing commercial property and or single family residences that have 0 comps. What the cost approach is going to do is it's going to look at a property, determine what it would cost to completely rebuild it, subtract out the land, depreciate for any functional or economic obsolescence in the building, meaning like, you know, nobody wants a 1-bed, 1-bath here in DFW. It's functionally obsolete. So you'll deduct values for that, and then whatever it costs to rebuild it, deduct the appreciation, and that's how they determine what the value of the home would be. Because if I could rebuild it for new for 100 grand, there's no way I'd pay 120 for it 50 years old. Does that make sense? So that's cost approach, and we're not going to really talk about cost approach much today, but I want to go ahead and throw out that there are multiple different ways to evaluate a property, 2 of which being income approach for what?
Commercial and rentals.
Cash flowing commercial for the most part, and then cost approach. Cost approach is for just when you flat out don't have comps, what's it going to cost to rebuild it and then depreciate it out from there.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in there is, you know, as an investor, 1 and 2, as a single family investor, you're probably never even going to dwell on that, and you're probably only like, huh?
As a single family investor, the probability of you ever using the income approach or cost approach is minimal to none.
Right.
I mean, you could be in this business for 20 years and never use either of those two standards. So
basically you're just saying I'm smarter than all of y'all because I know these approaches.
what I'm saying is I don't want you to go to some meeting and some D-bag comes up to you and is like, oh, you need to do more than just do da-da-da. I mean, you need to understand that it's there, but you also need to understand why it's not relevant to single family investing. Because, I mean, you'll get somebody that's just arrogant and be like, oh, you said it wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay it out there, multiple different ways to analyze this, but we're going to focus in on comparable sales.
Right.
Okay, because as a single family investor, that's what you should be doing. Now, I do need to preface the rest of this class with that very second slide that I gave you, which is an opinion or an estimate. Everything I'm about to teach in this class is based upon my opinions.
Right.
The way I run comps may not be the way you run comps, the way somebody else runs comps, the way your next door neighbor runs comps. What I'm going to do is try and give you a very safe window of general rules to use that'll help you guideline through selecting properties so that way you're not putting yourself at risk when you're purchasing something.
Right, and like I think I said it, I know I said it up here, it might have been on a Grant Teach Me Something 2-3 weeks ago about how everybody does comps differently, and my way may be different from other people, but my way's the fast, quick, lazy, down and dirty. Do I need to spend time on this way? Which is not probably right. Well, I know it's not right, but it's just what I've done, which is not good. It's a bad habit.
So if we're looking at comparable sales, I've got 5 main things that I always say are kind of my musts when I'm looking at something. And one of the first things that I'm going to look at is I need square footage typically within 20% of my subject property. So my best comp is if I have a 1,000 square foot house, that I find a 1,000 square foot house to comp it to. But home builders never build, a street full of 1,000 square foot house. You've got an 1,100 square foot house. Right. You've got a 1,080 square foot house. You've got a 1,210, and they kind of vary back and forth. So, we're going to try and find properties that are similar in size. I try to find plus or minus 10%, but I'll go out to plus or minus 20% if I need to. If I've got a 2,000 square foot home, I'm looking from 1,600 square foot to 2,400 square foot. I try not to get outside of that ballpark range. What happens if you have to get outside of that ballpark range? You will come into scenarios where everything I'm telling you is not possible and you're going to have to start bending these rules. What I'm going to say is if you start bending these rules, and I'm not even going to call them rules, I'm going to call them guidelines. If you start bending these guidelines, your opinion of value is going to be more subjectable. It's not going to be as firm based upon solid data. It's going to be a little more guessable.
Right.
Because you don't have good comps.
And on that, I'll just go ahead and throw this out there that when you do get in those situations where you have to bend those guidelines, be mindful that whatever direction you're bending, are you bending lower or bending higher, your better risk tolerance is to ease on the lower side. Like aim for the low, and if you can get the high, that's gravy, baby. I know several months ago, listed a house for, bought it and was like, I might be able to get 160, sold for 175. But my best case scenario is 160, 165, just because of risk. Now, if I went into it thinking it's going to go 175 and it got 175, I'd be like, well, I guess I was right.
One of the biggest things and the reason why that scenario occurred is because there was no data. And when you have no data, your values can be extremely skewed. And that is one of the biggest points, is the less data that you have to support your value, the more subjective it'll be. And I don't like investing off of subjective numbers. But if you're a wholesaler and you're moving forward and you're really trying to be aggressive at this, I suggest being aggressive towards the top side, because if you're being aggressive towards the low side, you're going to have people outbidding you all day long. So you might need to take a risk here and there. I am no fan of locking up properties that you can't close on. So don't go out there and just think it's worth 200 when it's obviously not. But
Daniel Moore told me to get a contract.
No. So other things I like to look for is I like to look for properties built within the last 5 years of the property, plus or minus 5 years. If I have a 1990 house, from 1985 to 1995 is the range that I'm looking for. If I can get it within 3 years, that's even better. Some of the things I'm going to have to lay in on this is whenever we're talking about this is if you have a neighborhood and you have a bunch of comparable properties that you can comp yourself to, Don't just say because it's comparable, but it's 1.5 miles away, don't use that one. If you have a neighborhood full of comparable sales, you better use those. Don't ignore all of the sales in that neighborhood and jump out of the neighborhood. Other things that you need to be taken in consideration is the beds, baths, and garage. Comps 3 to 3s, 322s to 322s. You know, you might be able to squeeze a 422 out of it. You might be able to squeeze a 222 out of it, and that's all going to be based upon what is the market telling you. If the market is telling you that a 322 sells for just as much as a 422, well, then maybe they are comparable. Maybe you might need to make a slight adjustment between the two of them. But overall, try and find something that is as close to your subject property as possible as far as beds, bath, and garage configuration. I always like to look at subdivision first. So we're looking at subdivision versus distance. If I want, you know, a specific, if I'm looking for comps and I have a lot of sold volume within that subdivision, I don't really need to look outside of that subdivision to determine the value of that property. I always want to be in that subdivision. There's going to be plenty of times though where we don't have comps in a subdivision. Well, what happens when we don't? We have to go further out.
Right.
And when we go further out, then your value might start becoming a little more subjective depending on how far out you have to go. So what happens if I go out, you know, 1/2 mile? Am I still good? It depends. If I go out 1/4 mile, maybe 1 mile, 2 miles, I might start becoming a little scared depending on if I'm in an urban or a rural area. But overall, one of the key things that I would like to stress is try not to cross geographical boundaries.
Right.
Geographical boundaries meaning major roads, highways, green belts, or hitting into subdivisions that are completely and totally different. And that kind of goes into the year built or garage type.
And on that, the subdivision distance on that is a perfect example would be okay, a golf course. Well, on the western side of the golf course, all the houses are selling for $800,000. But on the eastern side of the golf course, same type of house, the comps may be in the 300s.
Totally different.
It's a completely I mean, it's the same golf course, it's not quite the same neighborhood, but it's the same area, probably 100, 200 yards away. But because you've got that green belt, that golf course, it's a huge divider. So major roads, major cross sections, railroads,
geographical key points, like you mentioned the golf course, that's a great explanation. Even lakes, you might be on the same lake as your comp, but your comp is on this cove that's right on the other side of you, but that cove is worth a whole lot more.
Yeah, so you just gotta be mindful.
Gotta always pay attention to those things.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for recently sold properties too. And when I say recently sold, preferably in the last 90 days. If I have comps in the last 90 days, I'm feeling strong and solid on it. Now, a licensed appraiser may go back 180 days. But if I'm flipping, if I use a comp from 5 months ago, by the time my rehab is done, that comp from 6 months ago, 5 months ago is no longer comparable. We got a funny comment over here.
Yeah, like we were talking about the geographical distances. It's like a wall. MAGA, Make America Great. Hey, real quick, since we kind of interrupt there, if you're watching this and you like it, please give us a like, please give us love, please share it. Usually while one of us is on, the other's off, we're sharing to different groups. So if you can help us out, go to the different groups, go to the San Antonio group, the Houston groups, the Austin groups, the Phoenix, the wherevers, the real estate investor group that has like 100 million people in there. Share it to the group. Let's get this knowledge out there. If you've been in the real estate investor community, you realize that it is very rare for people just to spill knowledge for free. So let's get this out there. Help us out with those shares so we can. My dog just pooted, and it stinks so bad. Let's get this video out there so people can watch for free because this is knowledge. This is good, at least in my opinion. And as comps go, it's just an opinion. So please help us out with the likes. Please help us out with the shares. Sorry.
This is going to be a longer class, so I'm going to try and keep it sped up. So if you're here watching, this might be an hour or so. So try and hold out for the long run. If not, it will be recorded. Watch it later. But here we go. So let's take a look at the process real fast. Looking in at this process, we're going to have what I'm going to consider step one. And that is you're going to need to find and evaluate at least 3 recently sold properties that are similar in location, type, size, age, and quality.
Now you say at least 3. Is there a top number? Or is the top number mean that's even better?
Not so much a top number, but the more data you have to support your opinion. Like if I look at a specific subdivision and I see 35 recently sold properties and they're all really, on the low side, let's say 130, the high side 155. Well, then I can probably go through there and look at those 130 properties and assume, from looking at them that those are my as-is properties, and the ones that are selling at 155 are probably my after repaired value. They're nicely remodeled and stuff like that, and that's just throwing that out there. But the more data I have, the better I feel about my number.
Right.
I say that's step number one, but to get there, you're going to need to look this property up in the tax records. Go to the central appraisal district of whatever county you're working in and find out, what's the beds, baths, square footage. That always needs to be confirmed because the tax data is not always correct. So when you show up, don't assume that your 1,600 square foot house is a 1,600 square foot house. Make sure that you have it measured before you buy it because you might be buying more or less square footage than what you anticipated and can really hurt you. But once you know your tax data, go out and find 3 recently sold properties that are similar in size, age, location, type, and quality to yours to compare them to. To do that, you're going to need to get access to MLS sold data. That could be directly through a real estate agent. Call your real estate agent up and be like, hey, I need comps for XYZ property. And when they get that back to you, that's kind of good. But always double check their word because what does that work? It's an opinion. It's an opinion or an estimate. And if you're going to be investing several $100,000, you might want to make sure that that person's opinion is in line with what you're thinking it's going to be. So I'm always looking for something that is similar in location, type, size, age, and quality. Step number 2 is I determine the average price per square foot of the comparable sales. So if I have a 1,000 square foot house that's sold for $100,000, I'm looking at a $100 per foot sales price. So if all of my properties average out to $100 a foot and I have a 1,100 square foot home, I can assume that my property is going to sell for 110 grand.
This may be getting ahead of us, but if I've got a 1,400 square foot, does that mean I've got a $140,000 house?
That depends. Or am I using that 1,000 square foot property to comp that 1,400 when I have plenty of 1,400 square foot homes to comp it to? Then maybe not. Maybe those 1,400s are selling for $96 a foot or $94 a foot.
Right.
And the only reason that 1,000 square foot home sold for $100 a foot is because it was smaller. Smaller homes sell for more per foot on average than larger homes. But larger homes are going to sell for more dollars than smaller homes in the same neighborhood. I'm not saying like going across the metroplex, but
right.
If you're in the same neighborhood, a smaller home is going to sell for more per foot than the larger home, but the larger home will sell for more dollars. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I need to determine what the average price per square foot of my comparable sales are. Going into step 3, I need to make adjustments to the sold properties of comparable homes for items such as fireplace, pool, age, lot, size, number, and type of rooms, amenities, etc. Now to go ahead and just be frank with you, rarely do I actually complete this step up front on my initial analysis. My initial analysis is just going to be real quick, fast, and dirty. Give myself 1 to 2 minutes to really quickly get an idea what these numbers are. So that way when I'm pursuing the lead, I can get a ballpark. And then if I see that that lead's warming up and I'm about to get the contract, I'll dig in deeper because to really dig in deep and put together a full analysis is going to take you a little bit of time.
Because the whole point, if you're a real estate investor, you should be doing 5, 10, 20, 50 of these a day.
Exactly. And you don't want to spend 15 to 20 minutes on each and every single one of them.
Right.
So what I'm going to say is do your quick, dirty 1 to 2 minute analysis. Find out if that person is going to even come close to ballparking in the number that you're wanting to be at. And then once you know that you've got a lead on the line that is, in line with what you're trying to do as an investor, then dig in a little bit further than what you're looking for. But some of the questions I'll have for you here is like, how much does a fireplace change the value of a home? Does it really change it? And what I'm going to have to say is, you're going to need to look at your comparable sales.
It depends.
The answer to everything almost in real estate is it depends.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would say, and I wouldn't even say that, some people would say the only rule in real estate is don't lose money.
Right.
And I'd be like, there's some times where that might be a foregoable strategy.
I got so annoyed, if you allow me like a 2-second tangent. I was, obviously Facebook is great for source knowledge, but somebody asked a question and there was all this feedback and people goofing. And I answer the question with, it depends, XYZ. And then her response back was in kind of a
snarky.
Yeah, like, well, this blah, blah, blah. This is why I asked it. And I was like, I literally wanted to respond back with,
welcome to Facebook.
I know, but I was just like, well, let me further explain my point. And she's like, oh, okay, thank you. But I was just like, clearly it depends. Anyway, sorry.
It depends is a universal answer almost always.
Fresh wound.
Does a pool, and this is one of the things that I'll always ask people, especially whenever I'm teaching this class live, and that is, does a pool add or remove value from a property? Or is it say
depends.
Flat? Well, you know, if you think it adds value, give us a thumbs up. If you think it takes away value, give us a heart or something like that.
Right.
But ultimately, what I'm going to say is it depends. And what does it depend on?
The neighbors. What do they have?
It depends on what the sold say.
Oh, okay. My bad.
It depends on what the sold say. I don't care if the neighbor has a pool. I don't care if everybody in the neighborhood has a pool. What I'm going to say is look at the comparable sales data. And if you see sold properties with a pool that sold for $100 a foot, and you see other sold properties that do not have a pool and it sold for $100 a foot, how much value did that pool add?
Zero.
What else we might need to look at is the days on market. You know, did that pool increase the sales due to the speed?
Right.
You know, did it take, you know, the pool that the property that did not have the pool that sold for $100 a foot, did it take 30 days to sell and the one that had the pool took 1 day to sell? There's different things to look at there, but you might actually find in some scenarios the pools sell for less. And that might be a community where the community has its own pool and nobody wants the added cost and risk of having a pool in their own backyard when they can walk across the street and deal with the community pool.
Or it's just a community that naturally is younger families are gravitating to, and people don't want to risk having a small child around a pool.
So don't always take your own opinion and subject it on your CMA. Always try to find the data to support or validate what's going on with the property and leave your thoughts out of it. Such as another question is like, does a railroad increase, decrease, or stay flat on your value? If your house backs up to a rail line, is that hurting you? Maybe yes, maybe no. I know for a fact if you go to Boston, downtown Boston, you're looking at about $2,000 a month for a parking spot. That's to rent a parking spot in downtown Boston. This was a class that I did up in Boston one time, and I was very surprised to hear that. But in Boston, the closer you can get to a rail line, the more valuable the house is because almost everybody up there is using mass transit. And the value of being close to a mass transit source is extremely high. So you'll see home values as they start getting closer to the railway go up in value because it's easier to get around. So don't ever just assume that your opinion is correct. Always try and use the data to back it up.
Unless your name is Ryan, and therefore your opinion is always correct.
Ryan's awesome. Ryan's awesome.
Sorry. I'm just trying to be a little humorous this morning.
I get a little dry, I get a little boring, so Ryan's here to make me seem a little more approachable and fun. So,
well, back to Lacey
Ryan's
has a good point. She says the hotter it gets in Texas, the quicker a house with a pool sells. I don't know if that's anecdotal or just a quick throwaway, but it makes sense to me.
It does. I could see walking through a house in 110-degree weather, looking at that pool, saying, you know what, I want that pool. And then it gets to be winter, and I'm still maintaining it.
Here's
and
the
I'm
gas.
I'm done.
Cannonball.
So step number 4. I need to multiply the square footage of the subject property to the average price per square foot of comparable sales. So, like I said, if I find out what the average price per square foot of my comparable sales is $100 a foot, and I have a 1,214 square foot home, well then I know that my property is going to probably sell for $121,400. Probably somewhere in that ballpark, just to throw that out there for you. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a real quick example of the numbers. So we've talked about that. Let me go ahead and just give you some real quick examples. So if a quick example of the numbers, if the subject property is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, hi Rhino, hi Rhino. We have a 90-pound dog just like jumping, oh Rhino. So sorry about that. We have bring your dog to day work here on Wednesdays.
It's Valentine's Day. He's my Valentine.
So hey Rhino, sorry about the distraction. We have the subject property is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage built in 1979, and it's 1,376 square feet. What I'd like for all of y'all out there in the community to do is while you are watching this, go ahead and bust out your calculator and follow along with me so you can see what I'm doing here and you can see the process that I'm pushing forward and moving through. So use your calculator and we're going to move through this. Our subject property is a 322, 1979 build, 1,376 square feet. All right, so let's say I find another 322 built in 1978. 1978 is in line with what we were looking for, plus or minus 5 years. This one's only a year older, so I think that's comparable. And I didn't show the distance of the subject property, but just go ahead and assume that all of these properties that I'm going to discuss are in the same subdivision. It's 1,318 square foot, so it's just a little bit smaller than my subject property, but in regards to comps, that's a pretty good gold nugget. It's very similar in size, it's very similar in construction, being a 322, and it's also built in 1978. Now, I'm not showing you any pictures of these properties, but let's just assume that all of these properties are brick facade, front entry, two-car garages. Don't try and compare front entry garages to rear entry garages, because some subdivisions might be a little sporadic and change, a little bit. So
slab versus pier and beam. We're assuming these are the same.
We're assuming these are all the same. You don't want to comp bricks to stick to wood siding. You want to make sure that you're comping like to like. So from the outside, looking at the street, when you're looking at the house, could you look at that house and say, you know what, that's practically the same house.
Right.
You don't want to look at like a Victorian and compare it to a modern. Two totally different houses. Might be the exact same structure, size, composition, year built, all of that, but if you've got like a Queen Anne versus a ultra modern house, not comparable. You need to make sure you're comping similar properties to similar properties. So number one looks like a very comparable property. Number two, we're looking at this one as well. 111,000, built 322, built in 74, 1,442 square foot. So it's a little bigger, obviously about 5 years older. I'm still okay with that. Got another one here at 119,000, 322, built in 1980, 1,233 square foot. That one's quite a bit smaller. That's like 150 square foot smaller, but it's still within the realm of my 10 to 20% range, so I'm gonna keep it. But if I was going through and I had plenty of other properties to select from that were larger than that and were in good condition, then I'd probably X that one off of the list and replace it with one of the ones that was much closer to the size of my subject property. So, I have Sean Burke. I have a question here from Sean Burke asking, is this as-is comps or am I looking for ARV? That is an excellent question. That is an excellent question. What I am talking about here is looking for ARV, after repaired value. But this process is identical for determining fair market value. And the difference between after repaired value and fair market value is what's the home going to sell for right now, present condition, everything taken into consideration. What's this property sell for right now?
Right.
Now the alternative to that is the after repaired value, and that's going to be the value of the home whenever you place repairs into the property, such as updating the kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, paint, and all those other good things. So right now, this process works for both fair market value and after repaired value, but what you need to be very aware of is when you're selecting your comps, if you're going for as-is value, that you are selecting properties that are in a similar condition to yours. So if you have a move-in ready, non-updated house, then the comps you select need to be move-in ready, non-updated houses. What happens if your property is trashed though? It's like absolutely trashed.
Hoarding, trashed, all of it.
And you're trying to find comparable sales on the MLS for hoarded, trashed out houses. Well, there might not be a large volume of those hitting the MLS, so you're gonna struggle to find as-is value for that property. So what you may have to do is look at what your solds have done and then just start discounting out of that for the repairs needed to the property. And that's how we come up with the after repaired value. We're gonna look and see what that house is gonna be worth when it's completely fixed up. So I'm gonna select all the properties that have, all of the work done to it that I want to do. And as a tip for you as a rehabber, if you're using those properties to compare to, and then you go to remodel your property and you start getting thin on your budget and decide, you know what, I'm not going to do granite because I can't afford it. You may have just burned yourself, because what you're going to find out is now you're not going to sell it for what you thought you were going to sell it for. You put what you wanted to put into it, but now you're not selling it for what you thought you were going to sell it for.
You may not sell it at all.
Exactly. So if you get yourself into a pinch on a rehab, I strongly recommend just go ahead and biting the bullet and doing it right. Otherwise, you're going to sit days on market long. You're not going to sell it for what you wanted to sell it for, and you're going to be stuck in a bad situation.
Right.
Okay, so a little bit of a tangent there. Good question though, Sean. I appreciate that. So I now have 3 properties that I'm looking at here. All of them are within the range of what I would consider comparable properties to my subject property. The last one that we're looking at here is divide the sales price of the property by the square footage. And then we're going to add the price per square foot, or add the price per square foot up, all 3 of them, and divide by the number of homes to equal the average price per square foot. So that's why I'm asking you for your calculator here, because I want you to go ahead and do some math with me. If I take 114,000 and I divide it by 1,318 square foot, that's going to tell me what that home sold for per foot, okay? Right now, that's $86.49 a foot. So I'm not looking at the sales value of properties. Anytime I go to analyze a neighborhood, I'm trying to find out what this neighborhood is selling for per foot. $86.49 is what we're looking at here per foot. All right, on this second property, it sold at $111,000 at 1,442 square feet, but how much did it sell for per foot? This particular property sold for $76.98 per foot. All right, a little bit lower than that first one. Why? We don't necessarily know. That might be something we need to look further into the data for. Maybe it was sitting up against a busier road, or maybe it was just a perfectly fine property in the first property that sold for $86 a foot. Maybe it was backed up against a park or something like that. It had some additional amenities, or maybe for whatever reason, that's just what they sold for.
Right.
Okay. This third property we're looking at was $119,000, and it was a 1,233 square foot. That particular property, we're just going to say it was beautiful. Really well done. The other two were nice, but that last one was just a smoking hot, beautiful job, and it sold for $96 a foot. Some things to look at there also, though, is that it is considerably smaller.
Right.
It's about 150 square foot smaller. That's about 10% reduction in square footage. Could I still use that for a comp? Yes. But being that it was a smaller property, it sold for more per foot. And it actually sold for more overall, so we might want to look in and try and determine why those things happen. This is an art. This is not a science. So we have some things to look at there. But overall, I wanted to show you the science behind this. So now I have 3 properties, and I know what they sold for per foot. Is everybody following me up until now? If you are not following me up until now, go ahead and drop some questions in, because before I move on to the next slide, I want to make sure you're understanding what I'm doing here. So if you have questions, pile them on, and we'll continue moving forward as we go forward. So now what I have is I have 3 properties, and I know what they all sold for per foot, and I need to find out what the average price per square foot in this neighborhood is selling for. Does that seem fair? All right. So I need to add all 3 of those. So if I take all 3 of those together and I divide by 3, add 86.49, 76.98, 96.51, add all 3 of them together, divide by 3, I'm now up to 86.66 price per square foot times the square footage of the subject property. What's the size of the subject property?
1376.
About 1,376 square foot. And if we have everybody out there paying attention, and we take 1,376 square foot multiplied by 86.66 a foot, the retail value of our subject property is probably going to be somewhere around 119 grand. Okay, might I be able to squeeze 121 out of it? Might I sell it for 118, 117? Yeah, but that's a really good ballpark range of what that property is going to sell for.
Right.
Now, if I looked and I saw all those properties, and none of those properties were selling for more than 120, just 125, do you really think I'm going to get 140 for that property?
Are you a wholesaler?
If I'm a wholesaler, I might try. I might say so, but what happens is I see a lot of people that start getting way outside of the range whenever they're like trying to pull properties from different subdivisions when I have plenty of data nearby, or just going on the other side of the highway or going on the other side of the golf course, which is a good thing you said earlier. Try to take into consideration where you're pulling your comps from.
So Sean brings up a good point about, so you look for pictures and what it looks like for comparables. Because I don't know if this is later or if this is still in your preliminary stage. Because I know one of the first things I'm doing when I'm determining, even if it is a comp, and I know for your scenario we're not there yet, but you're like, is it the same kind of house? If this house has this, then this house has that. You know, they're not comps. Is it a 3-story house? Is it your 1-story? You know, yes, looking at the pictures, you definitely want to look at the pictures. On top of that, not to leapfrog too much, is even if you think it's a comp on paper, when you get to that neighborhood, you want to drive that neighborhood, because on picture, it may look like a comp, but when you drive by it, you're like, this ain't a comp. You know, so yes, definitely, Sean, you got to look at the pictures to make sure it's like, and then you got to drive the neighborhood.
Exactly, great point. And also when you're looking at your pictures, if you're looking for after repaired value, the pictures don't need to directly represent your property, but if you're looking to use that property as a comp, your property better damn well look like that one when you're done.
If it has granite, you have granite.
You better have granite in there. If you know it's an open floor plan and the kitchen's blown open and you've got a galley kitchen,
you're knocking out a wall.
You need to knock out the wall. So if you're using those types of properties, you need to include in your budget making your property look like those. So it's a very, very interesting thing. So how do private lenders pull comps? So many different resources depending on where you're at. A lot of private lenders are going to
Zillow. I'm just kidding.
They're either A, going to reach out to a licensed appraiser, They're going to reach out to a licensed real estate agent. Maybe they have access to MLS comps from either their licensed agents, or they have access to tools like Propelio.com. Propelio.com is a resource for finding true MLS comps. So your private lenders have many different places to get this from. So let's take a look at this. Let's continue on further. Okay. So I've mentioned this more than once, and I need to continue dwelling on it because it's an important thing to know, and that is, this is an art. It's not an exact science. Mm-hmm. There's no way I can sit here and tell you this is the formula from beginning to end that will work for every property you ever find.
It's like Harry Potter when they're doing the magic, and when they're strewing the wand, and I'm losing him, but the magic. You're not gonna get the finished product until you practice. So it does take practice. So what I would always suggest to people is, if you get access to MLS, you get access to Propelio, get on everybody's buyers list and just start pulling comps on every single house that comes through.
That is a great thing.
Just practice.
And then even beyond that, another way to practice this, because it is a bit of an art, that is, I like to tell people that I'm working with starting out, is like, go look at sold properties on the MLS and then try to comp that property to find out why that house sold for that. So like if I go into the L Streets in the northeast side of Dallas, I go into the L Streets and I have one property that sold for $378,000. What might be a good practice for you as a newer investor is figure out how they came up with that $378,000 sales price, because it already sold. So comp it and try and see if you can figure out how they came up with that. Try and figure that out.
And additionally to this little tip is going to be an obvious one, but don't be afraid to reach out to your friends, because if you are in this business and you should be networking, you should be networking with people that basically know what they're up to. They know what they're doing. You don't want to abuse that. You don't want to be like, hey Daniel, what's this comp? What's this comp? What's this comp? You want to do your own due diligence. You want to do your own homework. But if you're like, okay, I got 85 on this. Hey Daniel, do you mind running this number? And Daniel's like, it's 65. And you're like, well shit, I got 85. Do you mind running me through this? And Daniel's be like, well, yeah, I got 2 or 3 minutes. Let's do this. But find people in your network to bounce that off of, to double check your work. I mean, it's kind of like in high school, grade school, where you do your homework and like, hey, can you look over my work real quick? Do the work yourself, but get your battle buddy to take a look at it as well. And that's the easiest way to get better at comps. Don't get them to do it for you. Just you do it first and then ask their opinion.
So I did have a question pop up here from Sean wanting to know if we could evaluate one of your properties. Unfortunately, I cannot do that for you. That would be putting me into some scenarios where I can't be in. So I'm just going to say I would appreciate it, but I can't do that for you. But if you still want somebody to take a look at that, I can have one of our brokers take a look at it for you. And they'll take a look and give you a second opinion of value for you there. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of other things that you need to consider though. I just kind of highlighted the top 5 that I feel are the most important. What we really need to, though, is go even further and deeper into this. This is like the top 5 is your real quick and dirty analysis. That's your real quick number.
Am I interested?
Yep, am I interested? Now, as you start realizing that this seller is probably in line with what you're looking for, there's a long list of other what ifs that you might want to take a look at, such as highest and best use for the property. What's highest and best use for this property? Is this property best served as a 5-acre lot with a mobile home on it? Or is it best served as being subdivided out into 1/4-acre lots with single-family homes on them? What's the best use for the property? You may not always run into this particular scenario, but what is the highest and best use for this property?
Now, is this the get creative, think out of the box type mindset? Is that where we're at right now?
Like, what happens if we have a 2-bed, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot home with a 2-car garage in a neighborhood that's all 3 beds, 2 baths, 1,400 square foot homes with a 2-car garage? And what I've seen looking at my comparable sales data is that this property is set on the market for 180 days. It didn't sell. And I go look at the house and it's beautiful. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the house, but the market is saying that they don't want a 2-bedroom house. And that's why this property has been sitting on the market for a while. If I have 1,400 square foot there, highest and best use for that house might necessarily be, I need to show up, knock down a wall, divide up some square footage, and create a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage house out of it.
Or in a neighborhood where every house has a garage conversion and your house has a garage, you're like, oh cool, I got a garage in a neighborhood. Oh, they all have conversions. Like, that's one way to look at it, but the other way to look at it is, Okay, well, I need to turn this into a garage conversion.
I probably ought to do a garage conversion. And the flip side of that is if I'm in a neighborhood that's a 1,600 square foot neighborhood, and all of a sudden I'm picking up, a 1,600 square foot neighborhood with a 2-car garage, and I'm picking up a 2,000 square foot home with no garage, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh, well, all the comps are $100 a foot, so everything else sold for 160 grand, but I've got 400 extra feet. I'm going to sell mine for 200 grand. Nope. You better convert that garage back because your neighborhood's not a converted garage neighborhood. You need to convert that garage back. So what's the highest and best use for that property?
Right.
Maybe we're in a 1930s built neighborhood and we've got a bunch of new construction going on. Highest and best use for that property might be scrape it to the ground.
So it kind of goes back to the theme of everything we're talking about, which is it all depends. It's opinion and it depends. Those are the biggest two biggest takeaways you can get from this morning. Is it depends, and it's all an opinion.
So always try to find data to support your opinion. So looking at that, highest and best use. The second one I'm going to dwell on here for a moment, and that's objectionable market stops. That is a fancy term that I threw on there to make me sound smart, but it really is nothing other than a placeholder to remind me of why I wanted to talk about this, and that is you're going to come to a point where you're going to find support and resistance in a marketplace. And when I say a marketplace, for those of you that are not aware of Dallas, we have an area of Dallas called Fair Park. Fair Park 5 years ago was a $10,000 neighborhood. Houses were 10 grand all day long. Now we're hitting 50 to 60 grand and we're seeing some appreciation come through Fair Park. It's doing fairly well right now. But regardless, Fair Park is at best $100,000 at best, at absolute best. If I go down to Fair Park, buy up 3 lots because lots I can get for 5 grand a pop, and then decide I'm going to take all 3 of these lots and build me a 1-acre, multi-million-dollar house. I can do it. By all means, I can definitely do it. Would I be able to get it appraised on a cost approach? On a cost approach, I could probably get it appraised, but they're not going to have any comparable sales to support it, so they're going to have to use the cost approach, but who's going to buy it? Not a damn person in the right mind is going to go out and buy a $2 million house in the middle of Fair Park.
Especially when it has no copper.
The point that there is, though, what you're going to find, and that was a very drastic explanation of that, is I see a lot of rookies coming into this getting burned bad because they are over rehabbing and or taking a property that has massive amounts of square footage in a smaller neighborhood and doing a full-blown rehab on that and then pricing themselves out of that market. Because what you're going to find is a $200,000 and $200,000 neighborhood. It has $200,000 amenities, it has $200,000 parks, it has $200,000 neighbors and $200,000 schools. Just because you built a house that's 1,000 square foot bigger than every other house around there, or you popped the top off of it and added square footage to it and you did all that, doesn't mean that all of a sudden your house is going to be a $350,000 house. Because what's going to happen is, yeah, it might be a bigger house, it might be nicer, it might be this, it might be that, but what's going to happen is that the person that's looking to buy a $350,000 house is not looking to buy a $350,000 house in a $200,000 neighborhood with $200,000 schools and amenities.
And on the flip side, in Terrell, there's a popular Mexican restaurant over there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. In their family, they bought up some land in one of the neighborhoods over there, and they built exactly what you're talking about, like a $1 million home. But but literally you go out their gate and you're in a $120,000 neighborhood. That house doesn't lift their prices, and their house, I mean, they live in it, but they're never going to be able to sell it for their cost because nobody's going to want to spend millions of dollars on that.
Right.
Conversely, we were talking about Fair Park. If you are a rookie, you are fairly new into this business, I'm not going to say you can't make money in Fair Park, but I will say for at least 20 years, there's always been a rumor every other year about the next big thing coming in Fair Park where, oh, we're going to get the Cowboy Stadium. Oh, they're going to build a new fair. Oh, they're going to build a new Ferris wheel. So if you are...
Just do your own due diligence.
Do your own due diligence, but just remember that there's been rumors and rumors and rumors that there's been some sort of Fair Park renovation.
Well, to not stay on that subject for much longer,
right.
Fair Park has seen about a 400% appreciation in the last 4 years.
Again, I'm just saying.
So if you invested in Fair Park 5 years ago, you got about a 500% return.
Then egg on my face, I don't know shit.
I'm not just saying that. I'm just saying there's a difference of opinion. So
I'm
always
still mad at Laura Miller because if I want to go to a Cowboy game, I got to go to Arlington. Anyway, that should be Cowboy Stadium. Anyway, sorry. Moving on.
It really should have. Other things we're looking at is property type, and we discussed that earlier, but let's talk about that. If you have a townhome, don't compare it to a mobile home. If you have a mobile home, don't compare it to a single family house. And if you have a single family house, don't compare it to a condo.
Right.
Try to compare single families to single families, condos to condos, townhomes to townhomes, and mobile homes to mobile homes. That's going to be your best bet.
And so on and so on and so on.
And above and beyond property type, other things that we have already previously discussed, but we didn't dwell on. Queen Anne, Victorian, Tudor house, modern, mid-century modern, row home. You know, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a shotgun house, split level? Try to compare the type of property to the type of property. There are some neighborhoods that are a little eclectic, and they, you know, they're different builders, and they just came in and built whatever they want. And what you'll find is you're gonna have different property types. You know, like if you have a really ornate Queen Anne house, it's not going to comp to a mid-century. It's not the same. The cost to build it's not the same, and the buyers are not going to be the same.
The key thing to remember here in this conversation is like for like. If you can beat in your head when dealing with comps, I'm looking for like, meaning I'm looking for apples to apples. If you can remember that and stay within that, because again, as investors, we're always trying to find that gray area. We're always trying to push the envelope. So if this house, you know, just really stay disciplined to stay in that like for like.
Lacey's like, I like how we're all grown and laughed at the Tudor house. Okay, I still like those Tudor houses down there by Bishop Arts area and down and around there. I like those. But moving on, days on market. Days on market is something as an investor that doesn't directly reflect on your retail value, but it's going to reflect on your bottom line.
Right.
And that's why I include it here, and that is, if I'm going into rehab and I want to sell my house fast. I don't want to wait around 5 months to get my house sold. I don't want to wait around 3 months to get my house sold. Unless I get a significant discount to accommodate for that days on market, I don't want it. So I always try to make sure that my days on market, personally for me, if I'm rehabbing, are at the very least 30 days or less. And I try to find properties that are like 1 to 2 weeks. Your particular submarket though, 30 days is fast for you. In DFW, fast is 1 to 2 days. Average right now is probably about 10 to 14, and that's not quoted. That's just a ballpark in the back of my head. Anything beyond that, you're kind of in a neighborhood that's not very desirable, because we are in a housing shortage supply right now here in DFW, and you know, homes that are worth buying sell fast. Schools, this is something that you're not going to be able to see directly on a just regular old map. I know we have a lot of people watching, and go ahead and give me a heart if you care where your kids go to school. I know parents want their kids to go to a good school. And with that being said, you're going to see an imaginary boundary on a map where all of a sudden you might start seeing your property values drop off. Very similar in construction, might even be a similar subdivision, same subdivision, but what you're going to see very quickly is that your property values just dropped 15 grand, 20 grand, and you're not really understanding why. What may happen is you just jumped school districts. You may just went from, you know, Rockwall ISD oh man, I forgot that boundary line over there between between.
It's by Heath?
Oh no, it's I can't. It doesn't even matter. Right over there by Richardson ISD.
Why don't we just dumb it down to good school district to bad school district?
That works. It was Richardson ISD versus Garland ISD. There is a big chunk of, not a big chunk, but there's a chunk of Garland that gets divided off and goes to Richardson ISD. Well, you might be in Garland comping your houses, and then all of a sudden you have a pocket that's getting a much higher value. Well, you've just broke your ISD line. So you're going to Richardson ISD now instead of Garland ISD.
And one thing to keep in mind about all this though is yes, and some even brought it up earlier about you don't want to do too much data. The more data you can to determine your opinion, great, but at the same time, you can get analysis paralysis.
Don't do that.
But and again, the point I was trying to make before is dealing with school districts. Well, some neighborhoods don't even give a shit about schools because they're going to send their kids to private school anyway. Like the neighborhood I live in, it's Dallas ISD, and if you know Dallas ISD, you probably don't want your kid to go there. But most people will send their kid to private school. So it does matter, but sometimes it doesn't. So again, it goes back to it depends.
I like it. I like it. So Had a question pop up from asking about doesn't the month of year affect days on market? It kind of does. Obviously, you have your sales cycles, you have your hot sales markets, but I still try to look and get an idea if my neighborhood's going to sell quick. You're going to see neighborhoods that are obviously not selling very fast. They're taking 90 to 180 days to sell. Those are not areas that I'm really looking to flip in. I can, but I don't really like them. And regardless of the sales cycle, you might see some longer days on market, but you're not going to see, a sales cycle that's normally 2 weeks on market, all of a sudden winter turn into 180 days on market. It's just not going to happen. So I try to pay attention to those types of things.
And one thing to go back to the days on market, just real quick, because you touched on it, but as an investor, you need to be concerned because Daniel did say it affects the bottom line, but if you've got hard money loans out and it took you 2 months to fix and flip the house, and it's a 5-month days on market,
right?
Well, most hard money lenders, at least in the Dallas market, it's a 6-month balloon. So if you could do math, 2-month fix, 5-month days on market, well, that's already 7 months.
So you might need to restructure your hard money. You might have to pay additional points to extend your loan. And I'm not saying don't do it,
right?
But factor all of those costs in there and give yourself a strong pad because your exposure to the market is much longer. And give yourself some pad on your offer so that way you're not stuck in a bad situation.
Right. And throw back to 2 weeks ago with Grant Teach Me Something. Know your numbers.
Got to. That's the biggest part of this business is knowing your numbers and building a network. I think those are the two of the strongest things to know in this business. So other things, we've got schools, number of stories, overall comp 1-story homes to 1-story homes, 2s to 2s, 3s to 3s. Try not to ever comp 1s to 2s and 2s to 1s. It's going to burn you. I'm not going to say that as a universal rule, but it is a guideline that'll keep your ass protected. Make sure that you're following that. Lot size, there are areas of DFW where a lot could sell for $500,000 to $1 million just for a 1/3 acre of dirt. Well, if you've got one of those neighborhoods and you've got a 1/4 acre of dirt and your neighbor's got a 1/3 acre of dirt, that 1/3 acre really is a big difference in value. So make sure that you're not comping to a property that's, now if you're in your little Fox and Jacobs cookie cutter neighborhoods, that's not going to be a play, but I'm trying to give you a broad list of things to pay attention to.
Right.
Landscaping, not really important when we're talking about comps, but it is important as far as rehabbing goes. Make sure that you clean up the front of the damn house. I don't even know why I put this in here because it's not really directly related to comps, but make the front of your house look good. I see so many investors make the house look beautiful, run out of budget, and then put $5 worth of flowers in the front yard. Don't do that.
Because it goes back to the days on market, first impression, new people come in to buy the house, and I know this is getting away from comps, but again, yeah, you want to, it's all about that first impression.
Make it look at least like your neighbors, and what I would say is put maybe a little bit more in your front yard than what your neighbors are, just so that way you really get that great curb appeal up front. Pool, we've already discussed this. Does it add, take away? It depends on your data. Fireplace, here in DFW, I personally don't think fireplaces make that big of a difference. But what if I went up to like, the Midwest or the Northeast where it gets really cold during the winter months? They might want that furnace. They might want that additional source of heat. If you have a house like in the middle of Chicago where it's 5 degrees, they might not buy that house without a fireplace. But in DFW, it's more of like a nice thing to have because whenever it gets 40 degrees outside, here in Texas, we get cold.
Right.
So, it's, my opinions.
Like for like.
Terms and conditions of sale. Like we discussed earlier, selling a property owner financed might sell for a premium. So I don't want to take owner financed homes and compare them to traditional sales. Other things outside of that is like, if I know that my friend sold a property to her friend and hooked her up on a good price, that's not really a comp because it wasn't out on the market. It wasn't wasn't available on the market. And then off-site warning signs. This is a key thing that I need to hone in on for a moment, and that is going to be, is there something specific to that property that is going to adversely affect the sale? Does it back up to a cell phone tower? Does it have high voltage power lines running right over the top of the house? Does it back up to an apartment complex, to a Home Depot, to a Lowe's? Is it on a busy street? On the flip side of that, is it on a really nice section of the golf course? Is it on the nice part of the lake? Is it back up to a green belt? These are all things that can take away from your value or add to your value. And it might, you might be all in the same subdivision, but there's something specific to that property that is increasing or decreasing the value. And that's where it's going to start becoming a little more subjective. Like, if I'm backing up against a railroad, does that add or take away from the value? And it's going to say it depends. But if I have a property that backs up to the railroad, I better damn well find other properties that back up to that railroad and try to use those to help me understand how is it affecting my value. And if I look at all these other houses and it's not changing the value at all, I'm golden. But if I'm looking at it and I'm seeing that they're taking longer to sell, or that they're not taking as long to sell but they sell for less, then I need to use those in my numbers and not just ignore the fact that that's there. So be very, very careful of that. I've lost money on maybe 2 or 3 properties, not very many, but the first property I ever lost money on was because of a busy street. I assumed that the busy street was not going to affect my value. Boom, 6 months, 8 months, a year on market, and I finally sold the thing for a hell of a loss.
And I'll tell you this, is how many years ago was that happened?
That was 2008, and that was a big chunk of me not understanding the market.
So, those mistakes in real estate, those are your biggest learning tools, because I know there was a house looking at maybe a month or 2 ago, and it was a good deal, but he saw that it was on a busy street. Nope, not gonna do it. Get that out of my office.
You know how many houses I've bought with a busy street
Probably
since then?
since then, 0. Probably negative.
None. Like I'll be all excited. I'll see a wholesale blast come out, and I'll be like, damn, those numbers look great. I'll go and jump in there, and I'll be like, those numbers look like crap.
Nope.
It's on a busy street. No way in hell am I taking that. It's just, some people have done good on busy streets, and there's just no way in hell, from my experience, I will ever buy another busy street outside of a really cheap rental. So
if you like what we're doing up here, if this is the first time you're watching, I'm Ryan, this is Daniel, and we're from Propelio, and we're obviously talking about how to evaluate comps for your acquisition needs. But do me a favor, do us a favor, please like this video, please share this within your network, within your local real estate investor groups here on Facebook. We do this Monday through Friday for free at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So again, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And we still got more to go, but I just want to use this opportunity to, basically subtly plug to like our shit. Come on, it's free. It's on Facebook. So please give us a like. Please give us a share. Go to your real estate investment groups, share that in there. Also, if you've never tried Propelio and you're like, what the hell is Propelio? Well, Propelio is comps. It is leadless. So go to Propelio.com. We do a 7-day free trial, so check it out. Leadless, comps. That's Propelio.
Leadless comps, discounted properties off the MLS, lead management systems. We've got websites in beta right now, so if I have any Propelio users out there watching right now, and I can tell from what I'm seeing here, I do have some Propelio users there. If you want to go ahead and get your website started, reach out to my support team and say, hey, I know you're in beta of the comps, or not the comps, beta of the websites. Can you add me to the test trial? So go ahead and do that. We are in beta testing now. We went live with it earlier this week. So.
And going back to the comps, if you have questions, if you have comments, this is why we're here. This is why there's a iPad here, is so we can have this conversation. So jump in the comments, talk to us.
So I got a statement here from Lacey, and she's saying, too much traffic, neighbor has 4 barking dogs outside all day. I want to dwell in on that comment a little bit further, because I was working with a newer person that was kind of bird dogging for me. She's like, I've got this great deal coming in from a wholesaler, and I think it'd be great for you. Will you go take a look at it with me? And I was like, cool, I'll go look at it with you, because the numbers did look reasonable. Showed up, and as soon as I showed up, I was like, no matter what the numbers say, I won't buy this house. And she kind of looked at me confused, and she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, that house right there, I can clean it up. I can make it look beautiful. It's in the transitioning side of the southern tip of Bishop Arts. So there's a very, regentrification going on, a lot of that. No matter what I did to that house, I could not change what was going on next door.
Right.
And no matter how much I cleaned up my house, the house next door had, cars sitting on bricks. It was from my buyer's perspective. no matter what I do to this house, when they show up, are they just going to stand there like this the whole time to buy the house? So no matter what, I had to accept that there was things outside of my control that I could not do.
I went to a house a couple years ago, and the house was listed, but they were desperate to sell it because they couldn't find any buyers. So I was like, yeah, I'll look at it. So I'm looking at it, and the house is fine, but no one was making any offers. It's because the house directly across the street had a flag.
I can only imagine.
Whatever offensive flag you can think of, let's just assume it was that one. So again, to your point, you know, if your neighbors are offensive, well, guess what? You're not going to sell the house.
Yeah. So, and you really can't control your neighbors. So, you gotta be aware of that. Be very aware of that. So, moving on, I'm going to go ahead and do a case study. And what I want to do is dwell on that and kind of show you how I'm going to be looking at numbers and some of the things that I would do looking at numbers. So this is just kind of a case study real quick, but let's just go ahead and hop in here and see what we can find. So let me go ahead and minimize. Let me see if I can figure this out. Let's just go ahead and give me a couple of moments to pause. And I'm going to go ahead and get a... Go ahead and get the website.
That Trey like dance is still on there.
So yeah, go ahead and give us some likes and shares while I get you set up for some real quick.
Is it still loaded in there, Trey?
I think so.
Yeah. Or do I just dance right here?
All right. So I've got this pulled up. I'm going to go ahead and use Propelio because Propelio is getting you access to true MLS comps. So I'm going to go ahead and log into Propelio here. And while I'm logging into Propelio, I'm going to go ahead and analyze a couple of properties with you real fast. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple of properties that I currently own. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in here. Do you remember the address for Olive?
Which one are you in? Are you in Daniels or yours?
No. I'm trying to remember. I forgot the name of it. All right. Let me just go ahead and run a quick analysis on one of my properties.
You mean the one we own? We can't figure it out?
Yeah.
I don't know the address.
Let's just do another one here. Let's just do another one here that I got. I know the address to this one. Oops. This was an interesting property. I made a decent chunk of change off of it.
2904 Olive.
2904 Olive?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll go ahead and pull that one up here in a second. So here's a property that I flipped. Immediately what's going to happen is whenever I go into the system, it's going to go ahead and pull all of the tax data from that property. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, little over 1,900 square foot, almost 2,000 square foot, built in 1985. So there's my tax information off of it. If I pull it over and I save that, oh man, my nose is itching. What we're immediately going to see is a street view. So from the street view, I can see that I'm on a cul-de-sac. I have a lot of front entry garages with multiple different angles on the roof lines. See, if I was just looking at, I try to look at the style of the homes. 2-car front entry garage, multiple levels on the property in regards to roof lines and changes. So if I keep scattering around, I can see I got a pretty standard neighborhood. All of the properties look similar. So this is something I'm going to do to real quickly look at it. Now this is the subject property back here in the corner. So this is the subject property. One of the things I can see from right here is right off the bat, I can see I got a water tower right in the backyard. So is that going to hurt my value? We'll need to find out from the comps.
So real quick question, are you running this as a first time? It's the first time you look at it? Is this the first thing that you personally do?
One of the very first things I do is I look at the tax information, which we've already done.
Right.
The tax information is going to tell me who owns it, what the property looks like. So if I got somebody on the phone and they're like, well, I've got a 2,000 square foot house, and tax rolls are telling me it's a 1,600 square foot house. Mm-hmm. One of the very next questions I'm going to ask is, well, have you converted the garage? Because taxes show 1,600 foot, and they're like, oh, well, we added on to the house last year. I now know that we have an unpermitted addition. Mm-hmm. Or I could ask the seller, was that a permitted addition? And I might be able to use that as part of my negotiations. It's like, well, right, you're showing me 2,000 square foot, but that wasn't done like X, Y, and Z. So, we'll look at that. I got somebody on here saying, oh, snap, look at all them leads. This is my test account. This is not my actual Propelio account. So this is just where I go in and I do all of my work. So that's just like hundreds of properties just from doing demos. So don't go cold calling a bunch of BS leads in there.
Like a screenshot it.
Right.
Ooh.
So That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to immediately just kind of roll around the neighborhood. Now what I can tell from here is that the neighborhood's looking uniform. Everything looks to be very similar, so I feel confident in pulling comps in this neighborhood. If I was looking at this and all the homes look different, built different times, newer builds, older builds, you know, it's a flag in the back of my head that this is a neighborhood that's experiencing new construction, but I now need to be very aware of how I'm comping my property. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bump out to a street view. All right, I now know that I'm not on a busy street. You know, coming in here, I am kind of tucked up in. I'm not on the major road, so that makes me feel better. But I can bump over to satellite real fast too. All right, now if I zoom in from a satellite, I saw that that water tower was back there, and I want to look at it better. All right, so the water tower is kind of off at an angle. That may not affect my value. That may not affect my value, but one thing that I do know is you see this right here? It's hard, it might be hard for y'all to see on the screen, but directly behind that property is an apartment complex. Further and above and beyond that apartment complex is, here, let me see if I can go ahead and zoom out, make that a little bigger for you, is I've got an apartment complex right here. Now this is the subject property over here, but what you can't tell from the satellite view is right here behind the house is where the apartment complex keeps their dumpsters. So it gets a little stinky in the backyard. So if I'm analyzing this property, I need to think about what my end buyer is going to think about this. When they show up and they fall in love with the house, is their love for the house going to be enough to overcome that whenever they buy the house and step out into the backyard, that it smells like shit? You know, I need to think about this because it's my money that's being invested in there. So that's the process I'm going to use to take my initial first glance at the property.
And if you didn't watch Monday's episode about ethics, you may just buy like a crate full of smell good things and throw in the backyard when you're trying to show the house.
Bunch of those hanging trees that you got for the car.
Yeah. Like in Seven, the movie Seven or something.
I don't remember that.
Anyway, but there, you know, anyway. But yeah, don't do that because that ethically that's pretty crappy.
So, yeah. So if you walk out in the backyard and you're trying to buy a house and you see a bunch of new car smell trees back there, there might be something
There's either a
going on.
dumpster or a dead body.
Yeah, I feel horrible for Fred on that one. So, all right, so really fast, I was able to really quickly determine who owns the house, what's the tax say about the house. I've been able to get a real quick street view to determine what types of houses I'm looking for. Now it's time to run comps. And when I'm running comps, I need to make sure that I'm using like for like sales. So I'm gonna come up here, I'm gonna click this button, run CMA. Now there's a lot of stuff going on here on this screen, and we're not here to talk today about how Propelio works and all that stuff, but I'm using Propelio to pull this property that I had. I'm gonna click run CMA. All right, now once I've clicked run CMA, I have a lot of stuff going here on the screen. I'm gonna first start with, I've got multiple different pins on a map showing you prices, okay? Now I've got different colors. I've got red ones, I've got blue ones, and I've got white ones. Red ones are sold properties. I've got white ones that are active. I've got dark blue ones that are, or light blue ones that are active, and I've got white ones that are inactive. All right, so what I can do is if I'm looking for similar properties, I can click on any one of these pins and get an idea of what the pictures look like. Okay, so just looking at this first picture, I can see some differences in this property. Now, am I going to say that this is not comparable? I'm not going to go that far just yet, but what I am going to say is that it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different. So, if I float through this, one of the things that I'm going to say that's a little bit different about it is my subject property is a front entry garage. If everybody remembers when I was looking at that Google Street View, I had a 2-car front entry garage. This particular property is obviously not a front entry garage. Am I going to let that stop me from using it as a comp? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on if I'm able to find more properties that are front entry.
Here's a question that I've never thought to ask, and I don't think I've ever even heard it. That your subject's on a cul-de-sac, or is that a cul-de-sac, right? Courtyard, court?
Yes.
Dead end street?
Cul-de-sac, court. It's the same. Yeah,
same thing. Like, do you need to comp to other cul-de-sacs, to other courts? Or, because this is just on a road.
If I could, I'd prefer to.
Right.
But it might be hard to get that granular. But if I have a whole bunch of cul-de-sac comps that show that it sells for more or less, then I might need to take that into consideration. But this particular neighborhood is a little bit different. I'll come back to that property.
Disclaimer, I know what a cul-de-sac is, but every once in a while I'll lose a word. So just throwing that out there.
is this particular subdivision is only 2 streets. It's only this Glen Hill and Hillcrest. Outside of that, the subdivisions are gone. So I may need to pull from this subdivision over here or this subdivision over here to find properties. So it's really just because I have limited data. I'm looking at the last 6 months of data over here. If I wanted to go further back in time, I could come back over here and be like, you know what, show me the last 12 months. But as an appraiser going to look at 12 months worth of data, they are more than likely never, ever, ever going to do that.
Now, quick question, because this is your company, you built the process.
Me and Nate.
Sorry, Nate as well. The criteria, is it your preference or is it always the autofill, or how is that generated?
I love that question. What we do is to speed up the process, we have default criteria set in the system, which is plus or minus 20%, plus or minus 5 years, plus or minus 1 bed, 1 bath. That is the default criteria, but like coming in here, if I don't like what's going on here, just for showing you sake, I'm gonna go back 12 months and I'm gonna click search. I just popped up with a whole lot more data. A lot more data just showed up. The reason that is because I went back 12 months. Is an appraiser going to do that? No, but I as an investor, if I'm going in to purchase this house and I have very little data in my specific subdivision, I will personally go further back in time just to see historically what the neighborhood has done, knowing that an appraiser is not going to be able to use that data. But I will still use it just to give me a warm and fuzzy on the inside as to whether or not this is a good decision for me to make, okay? So I can start clicking on properties. We had already started out with this one for $265,000. You know, being a rear entry garage, I might not like that as a comparable, but looking at it, looks like I have some form of laminate flooring, some recessed lighting. I'm not 100% sure if I'm gonna go as far as to call this updated just yet. I'm just scrolling through. It looks like it's been staged, but overall, I'm still struggling to go for the updated feel. It looks like I've got new kitchen cabinets. It looks like it's been a remodel, so it looks like I've got fresh paint, new flooring. I'm personally not digging the design, but you know, it's updated. So,
and then going back to Sean's point earlier, this is where the pictures come into play.
So if I want my property to be comparable to this, I need to pick similar furniture and fixtures. I can see brand new cabinets, I can see granite on there, I can see backsplash, I can see, you know, nicer, newer faucets, stove. So yes, remodeled property. I don't particularly care for the design, but my design doesn't matter. But it's remodeled. So if I thought this was comparable, I have 3 options. Up here, I have 3 choices: thumbs up, thumbs down, or a question mark. If I think it is a comparable property, I give it a thumbs up. Obviously, if I don't think it's comparable, thumbs down. And if I'm not quite sure yet, I'll give it a question mark. So on this one, I'm not going to discount it yet because I haven't seen what other properties I have to choose from, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a question mark because it being a 2-car rear entry garage versus a 2-car front entry garage, I'm not positive on that yet. So by giving it a question mark.
Are you ready for yeah buts yet? Or on
2
that?
seconds.
Okay.
Let me finish off that thought process. If you saw beforehand, this used to have a thumbs up on it. Now it has a question mark.
Okay.
So what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to go through all of these pins, select which ones are comparable by thumbs up or thumbs down, and narrow down my retail value. So like right now, I'm showing a retail value on that property based on the ones that have a thumbs up on them of $158,000. Now, what the system is automatically doing for you is taking the average price per square foot of every property with a thumbs up on it. So if it has a thumbs up on it, then I've got that times the average per square, I take the square footage of the subject property, automatically multiply it times the average price per square foot, and that's where I'm getting the retail value. This retail value is obviously really skewed right now because of the properties that have been picked. And one of the properties that have been picked that I noticed, which is not a fault of Propelio, is somebody had a rental in as an active property and sold it for $1,495. Obviously, that property did not sell for $1,495, but a licensed agent went ahead and listed it and sold it for $1,495. So that is being calculated into the average price per square foot. Obviously, homes over there are not being sold for 70 cents a foot. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a thumbs down and watch what's going to happen to that suggested ARV the moment I do that. If I give it a thumbs up, 160,000, thumbs down, 236,000. Do you see how choosing the right comps can drastically change the retail value of your property? So going back to where you were at here, we're talking about this $265,000.
I was talking about the yeah but.
Okay.
But you know, going back to the slide of before of picking out the different factors, I'm looking on here and I'm seeing major road. I'm seeing major road, and I'm seeing your house way over here. So my but is, well, how is that a comp if you got two big old roads, you got this big old land space here? Again, I haven't been out there, but my initial thought process is, well, that's not even a comparable because it's way over there.
So here is the problem, and what we'll see very often is when we have limited data to pull from, it becomes a much more subjective opinion of value. In this particular scenario, I've gone back 12 months, and from 12 months back, that's what I have to choose from. So and what an appraiser is not going to do is go back 12 months. They're going to look within the last 90 days, and absolutely not more than the last 180 days. Typically, I'm not a licensed appraiser. If you want to get that, go talk to an appraiser, but they're looking for the last 90 days. I don't have anything in the last 90 days that have sold over here, so I'm going to be forced to cross that line.
Got it.
And if I am forced to cross that line, I'm still going to try and find something that is the best comp for me.
Got it.
And I'm going to have to just suck it up and accept that that's what I'm going to have to use because I don't have something directly in my little pocket. So I'm going to have to go a little further out. You okay, Rhino? Rhino's making cute little noises. So I probably shouldn't have said that because here he comes. Hello, Puppy Dog. You're a good boy. Oh, he's coming on your side. We got the neighborhood pets up here today. So it's Rhino. Save Rhino. Hashtag save Rhino. Ryan's girlfriend wants to kill Rhino. Oh, it's okay, Rhino. So, all right, we're going to keep on going.
What about the
Months of data. Okay, so like I said, months of data, we need to stay within the last 3 to 6 months. That's going to be where our pocket is. But if I do that, you see what just happened to the map. So what I may have to do is go further out in distance to achieve that. But let's take a look at what we've already encompassed here. I've got this one for over here for $218,000. Real quick look at the bathroom. It's a traditional remodel, but it has been updated to a traditional standard. I laugh because I saw a guy cold calling somebody the other day, and they're talking about the remodel they did. He's like, man, I just love it when people do a 1980s remodel on a brand new house. And I was like, man, I can't believe he said that. But it worked for him because, I mean, this house right here, it has been very updated. But based on today's standards, that might not be the taste of everybody out there. So remodeled. But, if I think that's comparable, thumbs up, thumbs down. I would not remodel my home to that, but, it is a remodel. It's in a very similar size condition area. And let's take a look at the front of the house. Let's take a look at the front of the house. Where are we at? Looking through pictures, looks at the backyard has a really nice covered patio. That might be an amenity that it's start for. Keep on going. Did they seriously not put any photos of the front of oh, there we go. So there we go again. We're in the same situation where we've got a rear entry garage. So, do I think it's comparable? I may just go ahead and have to call it comparable and then just maybe discount my property a little bit for the fact that I don't have the rear entry garage. Sorry if I got you in trouble. So, apologies if I got Ryan in trouble.
Renee does not want to kill my dog.
I believe she has an allergy, and it's just kind of...
But hashtag save Rhino.
Hashtag save Rhino. So we're looking at that one. Let's take a look at this other one.
Happy Valentine's Day.
We got another one back here for $190,000. Now, once again, this one has obviously been touched by a rehabber. We've got updated flooring, brand new carpet, fresh paint, new light fixtures. Going through, it has been updated. So I'm going to go ahead and call that one comparable as well. So if I've got both of those at comparable, and then I've got this one way out over here. Oh, did I even see if that one was front entry? What I'm trying to do is kind of give you an idea of what I would look through. Now, this process initially would take me probably around, well, the way they took a picture of the front yard, I can't tell if it's a front entry garage or not. So kudos to them for taking that picture.
So Tiger has a good question. He says, do you ever look at the months of inventory when running your comps?
I truly do. Now, I don't look at it from a standpoint of
Before can you at least go into what is he actually asking?
I'm not going to be able to define it very well because it wasn't really at the top of my mind, but months of inventory is if no new properties come on the market, how long is it going to take for the inventory that's currently available to sell off? Right. So if I've got 5 properties listed and it takes on average X amount of months for them to sell, I anticipate that inventory to be good for about 6 months. I've got 6 months of inventory before no other properties are available in this neighborhood.
Thank you.
So I don't approach months of inventory from that standpoint, more so of if I'm planning to purchase this to rehab and sell, If I'm looking at a neighborhood that's got 3 solds and 19 active properties available for sale, I'm not rehabbing. I'm not rehabbing because I've got a lot of inventory available, not a lot of volume being sold, and I'm not going to get stuck in the middle of that. Right. I'm not going to be in the middle of that. Now, on the flip side of that, if I go into a neighborhood and there hasn't been a sale in the subdivision in the last year, there is no inventory, and that I can see all around it, things are moving fast, I'm going to gladly buy that because it's obviously a desirable neighborhood. Homes aren't snuggling over, or I can't believe I just said snuggling over. As I looked over at you, I saw Renee's.
You just wanted to snuggle with me?
I just saw Renee's comment that says, I snuggle with that beast, Rhino. So as I'm going from here to here, I just see snuggle.
And then you focus on me and say snuggle.
I say snuggle. What I was trying to say is that it's a desirable neighborhood. I know that my property's not going to sit. I don't want to compete with 50 other property owners trying to sell my house.
That being said, because I know a big topic of what we're saying is everything depends, what if you can get a really crazy discount?
Discounts make up for everything. I buy numbers, not houses.
Right.
So I always buy numbers, not houses. Like if that neighborhood has a huge inventory on it and everybody's trying to push for that $200,000 to $300,000 mark, and then out of nowhere somebody says, you know what, I'll sell you this house for $5,000. I'll be like, give me 10 of them. 100 of them. I'll buy all of them for $5,000.
Because if all the inventory is for $250,000, $300,000, and you come up and sell one for $235,000,
you're good.
Guess what?
Or I just turn around and rent that thing until the inventory shrinks off.
Right.
You know, the rent rates on that, I'm sure would be great.
So say that one more time. Numbers. You buy numbers.
I buy numbers, not houses.
So keep that in mind in your real estate investor game. Dropping nuggets every day here at Propelio.
What I'm going to try and pinpoint off of that, since we're getting on a small tangent here, we are going on for a while, and I think we're getting closer to wrapping this up. If you have questions, go ahead. Now is your time to make sure you get them in, because I might pick out one more property to run through here after this. But I always say I buy numbers, not houses. You know, so many people I know, I won't buy a mobile home, I won't buy a condo, I won't buy a townhome. I'm like, screw you, I'm glad you won't, because I will all day long. If the numbers make sense, I'm buying it. I don't care what kind of asset class it is. I don't even care if it's real estate. I'll buy it if the numbers make sense. It needs to be a deal and I'll buy it, because like the very first house I ever did was a burned out townhome, and I cleared almost $100,000 on a townhome. I don't get it when people are like, oh, I won't buy a townhome. I'm like, are you retarded? What's the matter?
Or mobile homes, because they're mobile homes.
Exactly. I mean, mobile homes are like gold mines. You need discounts, you need it, but if the numbers make sense, buy it. So that's my own little tangent. Moving on here really fast. I'm not getting too detailed into this, but I've obviously got 3 properties here. I don't particularly care for them 100% because I got a lot of front entry garages. So what I might go ahead and do is, based on the average price per square foot of those 3 properties that are all very nearby, it looks like about a $236,000 property based on that. And once again, you would need to confirm all this. I'm not performing this for anybody out there. I'm just kind of showing you an example of how I'd run through and analyze a property. But right there, but I might go ahead and give it just a slight discount for the fact that it's a front entry garage versus a rear entry garage. But until it is actually sold, yep, so if I just look at the average price, we're looking at about $204 on the average price. If I look at all those, or if I look at the average price per square foot, we're looking at about $236,000. So, you know, just going out there, this is not an easy property to comp. When I say it's not an easy property to comp, what I mean is there is not a massive amount of data to support what's going on over here. So this would be a scenario where, you know, you're kind of ballparking a number. You should feel confident. I would feel confident saying that that property is going to sell somewhere between $200,000 to $230,000. Unfortunately, what I cannot do for you is say I feel like it's going to sell anywhere between $229,000 to $231,000. My window is wide because my data to pull from is small. So that might be a bit of a risk for you there.
But that's why, going back, not to tangent again, but if you're buying at a discount and you're buying it for good numbers, and you have that risk where you've built in enough risk tolerance for yourself that once you are ready to sell, you know, you're better off going out and buying another property. You're better off spending your time to do everything else. Get yourself a good realtor on the backside who's going to do the diligence and know what the best list price is to do.
I mean, if Jay Lee has any input on this, I'd be glad to hear what you would. So I mean, it's all good. So, so that right there, that specific property, I mean, I can't really get into it much further than that because I'm limited on data. And anytime you're limited on data, and I wanted to kind of point this out, you're going to struggle to find out more. So I don't know if we have time to run any others. Do we have? Let's go ahead and open this up to questions. So if we have questions, we've got quite a few people watching right now. I'm going to open this up to questions on the process and see, if you have any feedback on it.
And as we're waiting on the questions, biggest takeaways for me are obviously everything depends. You want to buy like for like, and you got to know your numbers.
Let's go ahead and move over to full screen. All right, so I don't see any questions popping up. I hope everybody enjoyed the show today. Do we have anything else other than maybe some quick comments?
Miranda, happy Valentine's Day to you as well. You make more money when you buy, not when you sell. Best house, best price. Rhino and Ryan are beasts. That's it.
All right.
I think we pretty much killed this class.
I think I bored everybody to death.
I don't think you bored people. I think we just pushed
We're getting
it in.
zero reaction out of this. So
It's Valentine's Day.
apparently I'm boring people again.
Real estate investors don't real estate on Valentine's Day.
Oops.
I know, right?
Oops. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody. If you enjoyed the class, please give us some thumbs up, some thumbs down, some angry faces if you're absolutely pissed. Give us a little bit of love. Please share it with everybody. I know we keep hounding on that, but it really does help us. Ryan and I get put in Facebook jail daily for sharing this type of stuff. So if y'all can help us out with that, keep us out of jail. It really does help keeping us out of jail.
Hashtag save Rhino.
As always, if you haven't checked out Propelio.com, please go out, check out Propelio.com, see how it works. Try it out, free trial, access to lead lists, pre-foreclosures, probates. Hope you enjoy all that. For our San Antonio investors or our Texas investors that want to see us down in San Antonio, we are having the first inaugural Propelio REI meetup in San Antonio.
Yeah, it's February 26th. We're doing the San Antonio REI meetup. That's going to be the first time we've done kind of a full-blown RIA type meetup. The whole point of that and the motivation behind that is we're tired of going to events where it's sell, 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 sell. I mean, obviously, we want you to try our product, but at the end of the day, we don't have to shove that down your throats. We want to bring like-minded people together to network, to entertain, to have fun, maybe learn some stuff, and meet some cool people. That's going to be February 26th in San Antonio. In March, we're going to be a little bit more ambitious. We're actually going to do a mini road show where March 26th, 27th, 28th. We're going to be in Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. So March is going to be fun.
March is going to be a busy month.
And this thinning gray hair may be completely gone and completely gray. But we'll have more details of that probably by the end of the week, into next week. But for now, we're concentrating on February 26th, San Antonio. So if you haven't already registered, go to the Facebook page and register. And we're looking forward to bringing you a different type of event where you actually do enjoy going.
We had our troll pop on.
We have oh.
So I guess that's about it for the day. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you enjoyed the class, please let us know, and we'll be doing another class here on probates. I posted a question the other day, and everybody was just honing in saying, I want to learn probate, I want to learn probate, I want to learn probate. So here we go. We'll have a probate class for you hopefully within the next month. I hope you enjoyed. Tune in next time, and have a great day.
Bye!